Hi everyone, we're going to be talking about Module 3 Part 2 in this lesson. I'm going to jump over here to the to-do list or to the schedule of activities. Scroll down here and show you that Module 3 Part 2 is going to include M3, S4, S5, S6, and Module 3 A2 assessment. And so we're going to jump right into that. To get there, of course, we're going to go to Module 3, and inside Module 3 we're going to go to Module 3 Study Activities, and inside Module 3 Study Activities we're going to go to Part 2. Now inside of Part 2 you're going to notice that there is a PDF. I'm about to pull it up and show it to you. This PDF is typical. We do this every time, but the second part, in this case M3S5, actually doesn't have much to do. This is it. This is everything. So this is just something we're going to discuss. And then finally, with information literacy, I'm going to discuss information literacy with you guys for a little while, but then there's a video to watch. So this particular video should be significantly shorter than the rest of them. Let's start with the writing, M3S4. We're going to go back over here and jump into that. Make this a little bit bigger so everybody can see it. Again, here's all the source material. It's all fully licensed. It ain't what you write, it's the way that you write. That's Jack Kerouac. And I wanted to start out this discussion about writing by telling you guys that I consider myself a pretty decent writer, but I was even surprised when I got to college at how much writing it required for me to complete my entire degree. Now, I do have a master's degree, and I will admit that most of the writing was done during my master's degree, but even in my undergraduate degree, the state of Florida requires that we write so many classes require that we write so many words, and there were several times I had to sit down and write 500-word papers. There were several times that we had to write 250-word papers impromptu, which means you come in, sit down, and they give you the prompt right then, and you have to write it right then. 250 words may sound like a lot, but it's really not more than about a page or page and a half, depending on how you write. But you know, by the time to graduate with my master's degree, and I actually had it pretty easy compared to some other people, I had to write a 15-page paper that was researched. And so college is going to ask you to do a lot of things. Last chapter, or the last part of part 1 of Module 3, we talked about reading, note-taking, and studying, and we talked about how that's very different at the college level. Well, writing at the college level is very different as well. We expect college level writing to be publishable, okay? Meaning there's no grammatical errors, there's no spelling errors, and it also needs to be robust. So quite often I give an assignment that requires a little bit of writing, and people give me a sentence. Rarely is ever the answer to a prompt in college a sentence long. You need to be thinking paragraphs. Most of the time when you write at a college level, they're going to ask you to elaborate significantly. And a lot of what you're going to be asked to do in college is short response writing. So we have to kind of break out of this high school mentality. We also have to break out of this mentality that we are on social media, because both of those are very different ways of writing. At the high school level, you kind of got away with writing smaller stuff, and in social media you can, your grammar is not really all that important, your spelling's not all that important. Well, at the college level, it's very different. So some ways that you can kind of approach writing in a positive manner. That's what this is going to be about here. Do you enjoy writing? And I did. I always enjoyed writing and writing down my thoughts. I'm not a journal person, but I do write like that on occasion. If you like to journal, you're getting way ahead of the game. Of course, most people today would rather video journal or blog, and blogging is good as long as the grammar, the spelling, the sentence structure and that is at the college level. But if you enjoy writing, you're way ahead of the game. If you don't enjoy writing, then guess what? Perhaps one of the things that you could start doing to improve your writing skills is to journal, and try to focus on perhaps thinking that one day, 50 years from now, your grandkids might be writing or reading your journal, and you want them to think that you were intelligent, not just somebody who wrote like you were a Muppet off Sesame Street. Okay. When you go to write, you need to be thinking about what your instructors are asking. I often hear or read responses that have very little to do, if anything to do, with the prompt that I gave the students. So focus on that. When you get feedback from the instructors, understand that it is nothing to be taken personal. I enjoy giving feedback, but when a student gets feedback on a poorly written paper, they often take it personally, and it's not intended to be personal, it's just intended to be constructive. Feedback is valuable. And I'll tell you something, I'll go even a step further. A person with a growth mentality can even look at feedback coming from someone who's delivering it in a rude or an angry manner, but ignore the tone in which the feedback is given and still accept the point behind the feedback. Just because somebody's yelling at you that you did something wrong doesn't mean you didn't do something wrong. You still did it wrong, and it needs to be corrected, even though they're telling you did it wrong in a very poor way. Instructors rarely, and if they do, they should be stopped, but instructors rarely give you negative feedback, or feedback it could be negative feedback, but at least it's polite, respectful. And if they're not being polite and respectful, that's honestly something that should be brought up with higher up at the school. But a lot of students, any form of feedback, even if it's in a respectable format, students get their feelings hurt because they can't take criticism. Very important thing, be able to take criticism. You guys are pretty comfortable with sharing your thoughts and your ideas with your peers because of things like social media, but this is going to be at a deeper level. And so if you're comfortable with sharing on Facebook fairly in-depth stuff, if you're comfortable with sharing on other social media, that's a step up. That means you have been opened up before to interacting with others and having them read your material, and that's good. When you do write papers, you need to write them with revisions in mind. In college, I had a friend who would show up at my house. We had a class at 5:30. He'd show up at my house at 1 o'clock, and we would sit and write his entire paper, one shot, done, print it, okay, let's go to class. And in our first year of college, he actually sadly got away with it, but it was something that he struggled with later on. Now this guy he's got like 3 PhDs now, and he's running some state college somewhere, but he'll even tell me, because we talk about that every once in a while, he'll say, man, I can't believe if any of my students did that, I'd kill them. So make sure that you're planning time, if you're going to write long papers, that you revise. But how does that apply to short response? Do yourself a favor, write your short response, then step away from it for a minute, maybe close your eyes and count to 10 or something, then reread it. A lot of times students will just write the response and not reread it. Always review and revise. Okay. Do you have a consistent approach to the writing process? Do you have a process for writing? Do you sit down and plan it, then write it, then review it, or do you just go at it, like a pirate, just kind of yeah, and get it done? Trust me, you need to have a consistent approach. Now, plagiarism. One of the biggest problems I see with plagiarism is that students don't know what plagiarism is. So let me give you a very easy, quick definition. Plagiarism is very simple. Did you write it? If not, then you have to give credit to somebody else. Yeah, well, I didn't write it, but I took theirs and kind of made it my own. Then it's still theirs. Okay? Here's what I don't understand about students. Why not give credit to that person? Teachers expect a huge portion, 50 to 75% of your paper can be other sources. We don't care if you're using somebody else's stuff. Just make sure that you're citing it, right? Now, if it's 100% somebody else's stuff, well, that's just flat out cheating. Okay, so the general rule is, if you don't want to get in trouble, whenever you are researching your paper, keep a list of all the sources that you used, and whenever you copy something off of a website, paste it onto a temporary a note sheet from Google Docs. This isn't the final paper, this is just some place where you're temporarily keeping stuff, and go ahead and copy and paste the citation there, and that way you'll have it done, ready to go. That way when you want to use it, you don't have to go back and try to hunt down the citation, and then also you'll remember to cite things. Because I got to tell you, inside of Blackboard, I've already had to do it in this class once, inside of Blackboard there is a plagiarism catcher thing, and whenever you submit something these days, there are databases worldwide that it checks against in just a matter of minutes, and it's getting harder and harder to get away with plagiarizing. So learn what plagiarizing is, and then for the love of God, just do it. It's not that hard. One of the main reasons people don't like to cite stuff is because they don't like to write the citation. Well, you can go to son of citationmaker.com, or you can just Google Citation Maker. Heck, I think it's built into Google Docs and Microsoft Word now, and almost everything is from an online source. So you just take the URL, paste it in there, it finds all the information for you. It says, I couldn't find this, could you look for it? You add that in, then it tells you what format, and here's your citation. It's unbelievably easy. You kids have it so easy today. We used to have to, back in my day, after we went to school uphill both ways in the snow and broken glass barefooted, we had to learn how to make these citations, and no, that was not fun. All right, when you do write a paper, you're not John Wayne here. You don't have to do it on your own. Go get some help. There's lots of sources to help. There are people, every college, in your state college, has a person that will read your paper for you. You can submit it, you can actually take it to them, print it out, they'll make notes. You can email it to them, they'll make notes. There's lots of ways that we can get your papers examined. And again, you've asked them, tell me what's wrong with this paper. And so if they hand it back to you and it looks like there was a battle between red pens on there because they just marked up everything, take that for what it means. You need to fix them. Don't let it hurt your feelings, okay? And learn from it. And then finally, when you do write papers, no matter where you are in college, write them at a college level. Whenever you write a sentence, a word, make sure it's at a college level, okay? You're not texting your friends, you're not posting on social media, and you're not in high school anymore. Even if you are in high school, you're writing for a college instructor, okay? So here's some things that you need to be able to do to write papers well. Use resources effectively and appropriately. Find and use resources effectively and appropriately. Understand the expectations from the instructor. If the instructor tells you to write 2 paragraphs, then you're going to write 2 full paragraphs of at least 3 sentences each. Don't try to get away with it. You need to learn how to cite sources in a proper form, which means nowadays it means you need to go find these online citation makers or the built-in citation makers into Microsoft Word or Google and learn how to use them, okay? And where to put the citation. Do you put it at the end? How do you signify it with the superscript? Okay, so learn to be productive by brainstorming and other pre-writing activities. This can be done by yourself or it can be done in groups. You can brainstorm on your own or you can brainstorm in groups, and there's other pre-writing activities such as free writing and outlining. Make sure you do all that. Sharing your work in drafts and accepting feedback. It would be instructors who regularly require you to write large papers will often look at your draft first. So you submit to them. Sometimes that's even part of the assignment, is to submit a rough draft that they review and then they hand it back to you. Make sure that you are working on a draft, and then when the feedback comes back, you accept that feedback in a positive way and fix it. Also, when you write the paper, make sure that you transition between your ideas. This is where outlining comes in, because you'll know in this section you want to work on this concept, and in this section you want to work on this concept, and you need to work on a transition between the two. Don't just place them in there randomly. Make sure that there is a clear paragraph or the end of one paragraph leads into the next, even in between ideas, which helps you, because also it's a good idea to organize your ideas, which is another reason that outlining is important. Skipping down here, developing ideas fully, drafting or redrafting, we know that. Using correct sentences, we've talked about that, but I cannot impress this enough. Make sure that you are looking, use the spell checker. If there's a squiggly line underneath, whether it's red or green, fix it. What's the thing I see all the time on the internet now? Grammarly.com, I think, or these sources. They're great. I consider myself to be a pretty good writer, and every once in a while they make a suggestion and I go, wow, that sounds better. So these things are really well. Install them. Sometimes they're free, there may be a cost, but use them. They do a great job of improving the sound of a particular sentence or even a paragraph. And then, find tons of references. Don't limit yourself to the internet. It's convenient, okay, but it can be lazy, okay? Make sure, in some cases you may have to go to the school library, the campus library, and actually physically use a book. I know that's hard to believe, and if some of you guys may not even know what a book is, it's like somebody printed out a website and put it into a convenient, easy to use format. But a book in the books, the magazines, the stacks at the library are very useful. And speaking of library, that's what we mean by campus resources. When you go to the library, there are people there that would love to help you. They love it so much that they got a degree in library science. So if you go in there, you can find somebody at the main campus of IRSC, and there's a few other satellite campuses with libraries. You can go there and find a person that can help you. Now, don't go there and just say, hey, I got to write a paper, what do I do? But if you go there with specific questions, and even if you go there and ask that and you're willing to learn, they can get you started. But don't expect them to do your work. They're going to assist you in doing the work. They're going to maybe guide you in the right direction. But if you go there and with a good attitude and ask some really good questions, you're going to find that the librarians at these schools, these library technicians or library scientists, I forget what they ask to be called now, but that these people just are lovely people who are dying to help you. And by the way, they're very good at remote assistance as well. You can get their email, you can get their phone number, they'll Zoom with you or whatever video interaction software you want to use. They can do all of that, and they're happy to do it. So take advantage of them. They're wonderful people. All right, I'm going to ask you guys to read through this. Why do writing skills matter? You got to know that the gist of this is basically this. When you graduate college, one of the reasons we make college to be challenging is because we're trying to produce a person that is an academic. Okay, and so an academic is someone who is good at communicating, among other things. That is one of the skills that you can look for from an academic. Now, academics know how to write. That's just all there is to it. A person who graduates college should be able to write well, not just write a short note to somebody. We're talking about produce a paper within a reasonable amount of time for an employer. Yeah, but I want to be a welder when I grow up. Good. There's only one thing to be. That's the best welder around. And the best welder around is able to write well. I promise you this. You have to believe me that in every aspect. I have a niece who is an agricultural scientist. She wanted to go to college and she wanted to come home and manage the family ranch. She has a degree in it. She's getting a master's degree in it, and I'm telling you right now, she does a lot of writing. She's been published in farm magazines, and the result of that is that she's one of the best. How do you get to be the best at whatever? I don't care if you want to be a psychology instructor, a doctor, a welder, or a farm manager. You need to learn how to write. This is why writing is important, and employers are looking for that. It's different than high school. In high school, you weren't asked often to be a master of writing. We let you get away with it. The SATs were shooting for high school level language. So when you studied for the SATs and getting ready for college, you could pass the SAT and still not have a huge command of the English language. If you knocked the top out of the SATs, then we could tell that you had a good writing skill. But that means, okay, now you're ready for college. Most college papers, this is like the best sentence on this page. A paper that would earn a top score in the SAT might only get you a C or even a D in a college class if it doesn't show original and ambitious thinking. So if you took the writing portion of the SAT and you remember that prompt and what they asked you to do, understand that that's your response. If you earn a top score, that's a mediocre response in college. We're looking for people who can really write. So how do you develop your writing? There's a lot of ways. The best thing you can do to develop your writing skills is to read. Reading for pleasure, reading newspapers, reading well-written articles even on Facebook or other social media is going to kind of get your brain into the ability to see well-written sentences, well-written paragraphs. And you're going to then innately just kind of know something's not right with that sentence and you need to fix it. Okay? Good writers also practice. So journaling, okay? Other types of writing, always ask for help. Ask somebody else to read this. Hey, read it. I do this to my wife all the time. Read this. What does this sound like to you? And she's very good at helping me do better at my writing. Writing is a soft skill that you will constantly improve. And the more you do it, the more you think about it, the better you're going to be. Ask your professors to help you out. Take some writing classes. Okay? There's lots Lots that can be improved on in writing. Here you go. Examine your writing assignments. You can do that. Okay, we're going to go through some advice here. When you're doing essays, these long, 1,500 word essays, a couple of things that you need to remember. Did you reflect, does it reflect an accurate understanding of the source's purpose? When you are trying to explain your paper, are you reflecting what the sources tell you? Does it differentiate between the major and the minor ideas of a source? Okay, you've read this source, it's given you all this information. Can you tell the major ideas? And don't forget, there's some minor stuff they probably stuck in there too. Can you identify the key phrases? Can you effectively paraphrase most of the source's ideas? And don't forget to cite it if you're paraphrasing it. Does it capture the tone, the style, and the distinguishing features of the source? So you're writing your research paper. Okay, now remember, this is a summary. This isn't you adding in your stuff. This is just you taking several sources and summarizing it. Okay, it's a common thing that happens in college. We don't want you in this. We want you to take what you've learned and summarize it. So, does it sound like the tone, the style, the distinguishing features? Does it sound like the source or sources you were told to summarize? It should not reflect your personal opinion. So work very hard to keep your personal opinion out of it. It's something we want to do all the time. Keep your opinion out of it. Okay. Yeah, you know what? I know I just said it happens all the time. I know that summary only assignments are kind of rare, but you are going to be asked often to summarize and then turn that into a little bit longer lesson. All right. Defined topic assignments are going to be those things where they give you a prompt. This is probably what you think of as the most. Focus on the verbs. What are they telling you to do? Are they telling you to compare? Then you better be finding two or more things and talking about the relationship between the two, and do a comparison. What are they differences and a similarities? If you're asked to explain, then there's no comparison. You're just going to kind of do a summary, right? If you're asked to justify, now you're going to have to come up with an opinion and then justify your opinion out of the sources. A reflection is actually one of the easier things to write, because that is, you describe and kind of summarize the source material, and then you reflect on it based on what you're thinking. And then there's analysis. You're going to analyze. Analyzing it means looking at it for a specific thing. Did it describe this? Did it explain this? Could you pull this from it? Okay. So you put the assignment into context. What is the instructor asking? How long? Are you supposed to take one side or several arguments? You're supposed to look at both sides. Is there a sequence to it that you're supposed to examine? And then are you supposed to have a lot of you in it, or is it supposed to be a lot less of you and more of just a kind of a summary of the material? Try free writing. One of the things that helped me a lot in college was when I got stuck, I would just sit and start writing. And I call it traction. There's something about sitting down and starting writing that kind of juices up your brain and gets you going. The thing about free writing is a lot of what you're going to write, you're just going to throw away, but it's going to get you started. And then you're going to hit something in your brain. It happens as you're writing, and as you're writing, your brain says, oh, hey, there's something to think about. And then there's a little nugget, this useful little nugget that you can start writing around. Throw away most of it, but you found that useful little nugget, then you can start writing. That's why free writing is very helpful when it comes to doing a great job at writing. Just sit down and start writing. You're not trying the beginning, you're not trying the middle, you're just going to write. And like I said, you'll get somewhere, and then you'll be able to start building around that nugget of an idea. Okay, again, don't be afraid to throw stuff away. Finally, don't forget to ask for clarification. Instructors are very good at giving assignments, but we think that you understand it. And if you don't, you need to come to us and say, would you please explain this part? And we're happy to. And if we're not, go find yourself another professor, because that guy stinks. Okay, sometimes there's undefined topic assignments where you're asked to come up with your own. Wow, how do you do that? Well, there's a great coming up with your own ideas, such as writing your thesis at college. Coming up with your own idea requires you to do some brainstorming, requires you to maybe spend some time with your professor or some other friends, somebody else in the field. It's one of the hardest things to do the writing on, but once you get your idea and you get it approved by your instructor and you get going, it's actually one of the most fulfilling. Okay, so this undefined topic assignment, I hated them for a while, but then I realized, man, this is my time that I can write whatever I want to write about. Okay, so once you get it approved by your instructor, and include your instructor in that process, but once you get it included, you might actually think you might actually find you'll like it. The writing process is a process of getting started, then reviewing, then revising, then doing it again and again and again. There's a great video here that explains it, and I would encourage you to watch that. This is it at its basic level. Okay, you come up with a topic or question, then you do your research. Everybody hates the research part. I really don't know why. It's actually kind of fun if you think about it. But the research part is probably, to me, half of it. Okay, you do your research. When you do your research, write down everything. Now today we don't have to physically write it down. We can just copy it and paste it, but keep these notes. Anything you find that might be interesting, write down the URL and a quick explanation of what it is. That way it's your research. You'll be able to go back and find it. Okay. One of the things that I had to learn how to do was to keep better notes, because I would look at something and go, oh man, that's great, and then 2 hours later need to go back to it and couldn't remember where I found it. Always take good notes. Okay. Develop a thesis or an outline. Develop a thesis and an outline. After you've done your research, once you come up with your idea, your topic, your question, your research is going to help you refine that, among other things. And then at some point, you're going to start pulling things together naturally in your brain. This is what the instructor wants, is for you to take all these different research that's already been done, not replicate it, not explain it, because that's already been done. We don't care about that. We're looking for something new. And so when you're writing these research papers, we want you to look at all these different sources, and then it's going to naturally in your brain come together in a unique way that no one's ever thought of. Then you come up with your thesis and your outline. Once you get that, start writing that draft, and by this point you should have some real traction. Okay, and we haven't even started writing yet, and look, we've gone through 3 steps here, and these are the biggest 3 steps. Once you get to actually start writing, it should start coming out pretty quick. Just start free writing, putting it down, then have somebody else read it, and then don't forget, you can't do this in an afternoon. You're going to have to write for a while, get up, go away, come back. It should take days or even weeks, depending on the assignment. Then once you're done, you've got a rough draft. You submit it to the instructor, have them give you a lot of feedback, then go back and fix that feedback. This process, to be done right, is lengthy. It's not something you should do in an afternoon. Okay. The revision and the proofreading involves other people. I mean, yes, you can do it, but you're going to have to get up and go out and get away from it for a while and come back. So that's what we call re-seeing it. This idea that you've been at it for a long time, your brain gets just caught up in it, and there are things that you think make sense because your brain knows the little hidden parts of it that you didn't actually get onto the paper, but other people don't see it. So one of the best things you can do is swap papers with somebody. I'll read yours if you read mine. And then you go through there and be brutal, because you want them to be brutal and honest. Be brutal and honest. I don't get this. What the heck are you trying to say here? And then give them more information than that. What do you mean when you say this happened but then this happened? You're missing some stuff, and hopefully they're doing the same thing to you. All right. Find a trusted person to do it, and you want to do that before you hand it to your professor, and then when you hand it to your professor, they're going to do the same thing. And who knows, it may be looked at 3 or 4 times, but that is an important part of the process. Okay, we talked about using resources, using sources. This is a video on citations. I don't want to go into that too much because, first of all, I hate it, but second of all, it's a much easier process than it used to be. So just take a quick look at the citation ideas here, so you at least know what we're talking about with citations. The MLA and the APA Chicago, these are different styles. Just take a look at it, and then just do the automated thing once you understand what it is. There's some resources here. I'd strongly encourage you to go look at those. And that ends this particular, this is the M3 whatever, and that ends this. We're going to move on. M3S5 is just quantitative strategies. This is how to deal with things that are quantitative rather than qualitative. Qualitative stuff is the reading and the writing and this, but quantitative is all the math. Okay, dealing with math is, well, you can see it's not easy to do, because we couldn't even find a good resource here, so we just came up with some questions. Okay, what have been the greatest strengths and barriers that affected your success in a quantitative course? Reflect on that. You don't have to hand this in, just reflect on it. When you took a math course, were you good at it? Outstanding. Most people are either good at the reading and the writing, or the math. Rarely do I find somebody that is outstanding at both. So, you know, if you are good at the reading and writing, you may struggle with the math. If you're good at the math, you may struggle with the reading and writing. But if you are struggling with math, what keeps you from doing that? Most of the time you're going to find it's not really that you can't do it, it's that you don't want to invest the time into the practice. Math is one of those things, even chemistry is one of those things where it's just practice. Okay, you got to go out just like you're going to go out and pitch a baseball for hours at a time to improve your control of the ball. Same thing with math. You just got to do the problems over and over and over again. Most people don't want to do that. What are some examples of procedural and declarative memory or long-term memory tasks in quantitative courses? These are the things. The procedural and the declarative memory is you're learning how to do things kind of in a format. You know, for example, and this is a very basic example, but all multiplication is just a very clever addition problem, right? But when you learn how to multiply, this procedural and declarative memory is learning things like how to carry the 7. I guess that's division, right? But how to learn how to carry things. You know, there's actually a process for division. Okay, there's actually a process for mathematics too, or for multiplication too, and you're right, there's carrying in there. But learning how to do that, that's that procedural memory, and it's at a basic level, but you don't know how to do it when you're 5 years old. Somebody has to teach it to you. Okay, and once you learn how to do that, then we step up to more complex things like much larger numbers, or using that one skill inside of algebraic functions. All right, can your understanding of memory help you to do better at that? Now, we haven't studied memory a ton right now, but there's memory tricks that you can use, and they're very useful. And what role does organization play in your success in quantitative courses? Are you an organized person? Because you better be if you're going to do well in quantitative classes like chemistry and math. You can't just go in there and treat it like an art class. It's not an art. It's a science. Not that science is an art or the reverse, but you have to be highly organized in these classes, taking good notes, keeping track of your time. Okay. Yeah, this is a little hard to teach, so just read this and kind of reflect on those. You'll be fine. Almost done here. M3S6 is information literacy. We've already covered this a lot, but one of the main focuses of this particular assignment is that you are good at identifying whether or not a source is credible. Okay, there's lots of ways. We used to call it CARS, which stands for credibility, accuracy, reasonableness, and support, I think is what that stood for. We're going to change that to RADAR. RADAR stands for rationale, authority, date, accuracy, and relevance. So whenever you have whenever you're doing research and you come up to a source, you want to make sure that source is credible. And that's a real difficult thing these days, because there's lots of sources out there that are uncredible. You know, anybody can put something on the internet these days. So how do you sift through all this stuff that you find, and you get stuff that is credible without bias? Finding something without bias is practically impossible. So the best thing to do is try to find the sources that have the least amount of bias, and then try to find that bias and read past it anyways. I'll give you an example and I'm done. I worked on a cattle ranch growing up. I come from a cattle ranching family. I'm a huge proponent of cattle growth and cattle management and selling beef. Okay. However, if I were to ask a student to write an article about the effects of long-term agricultural practices on the environment, if they found a website talking about that, but it was from the American Beef Council, would you consider that to be unbiased? I hope you're saying no. There's definitely going to be some bias in there. However, does that mean that it doesn't have some good information in it? There could be some rational information. You know, there could be some information in there that's important with authority. There's a lot of good agricultural scientists out there who can present information in a way, they're basically presenting their side of it. Okay. Is it accurate? Is it relevant? Just because it has bias doesn't necessarily mean that it's not relevant or accurate. But what you're going to want to do is you want to go find the opposite argument and then use both sides of that information. So this is what we mean by radar. Okay, can you find sources that are credible? One of the things that I haven't gone over real fast is date. Please understand that in this day and age, if it's 3 or 4 years old, it's practically outdated. Rarely are you going to find such an old assignment or an old source that is considered credible. All right, let's talk about the assignment real fast, and then we're moving on. Okay, back in Module 3, we're going to jump down here and go to Assessments, and the associated assessment is M3A2. This is a discussion forum. So I want to be clear about something. You're going to download this file right here. It's called M3A2 Academic Success Plan. Okay, and it's a template for you to fill out. I'm not going to open it because I'm running out of time, but it's a template for you to fill out. Answer the questions, go through it, save it as last name, first name, okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to go through the discussion board here. So you're going to click on this title right here. It's going to take you to a discussion board. You're going to create a new thread, and in the subject line you're going to type your first name and last name, okay? And then you're going to paste the results of this academic success plan in there, okay? And this is going to be for everybody to see. So this is one of those assignments, one of the few assignments in which you're going to share this with a friend or with the class. But you're going to complete this academic success plan doc. You're going to go post it onto the discussion board. And then if you're one of the first people there, you may have to wait a little while. But if you get there and people have already submitted, you're now expected to find another post, okay? And they're going to, in the assignment, there are 3 help resources. You're going to go look at their 3 help resources and talk about what they chose and what they said about it. You're going to respond to them. Now these responses need to be, again, at a college level. They need to be at least 3 or 4 sentences, and they need to be positive and helpful, okay? And once you have posted your version of this academic success plan, you filled it out, and once you have responded to somebody else and looked at their 3 resources and responded in a helpful way, well-written college level response, you've completed the assignment. Okay? All right, that's it for the second, for M3, for Module 3 Part 2. Go get to work.